before we take our seats. Um, it'll be a nice thing if we get to know each other very quickly. So please go around, meet 3 people, only 3 people. And these are 3 questions you'll ask them: their name, their first and surnames, what they do for a living, and their best food. And their best food. Their first name, their surname, what they do for a living, and their best food. You're asking only 3 people. Only 3 people. We're doing very awesome. We're doing very, very awesome.
I'm an architect. How about you? Are you serious? Oh, nice to meet you. Very well.
You never know, there might be a prize for you if you remember the names and the best meals at the end of this program. You never know. So make sure to ask and make sure to retain whatever information you're being given. 3 people, 3 people. I think it's okay if you have gone round your 3 people to just take a seat. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. You're most welcome to the Cras Zenith Horizon Legal Practice Conference titled The Nigerian Business Terrain, Impact of Recent Laws and Regulations. My name is Oladayo, and I'm going to be your event host for today. So I kindly ask you that you smile at me, and if it's not too much to ask, clap for me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And to go right into this program today, to bring us the opening remark for this wonderful event is Mr. Emmanuel Oheji, a partner at Cras Zenith Legal Practice. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's put our hands together for Mr. Emmanuel. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dayo. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, our esteemed panelists. It's good to have everyone here. We are one to keep to time, so we would kick right off. I want to say a very big welcome with great pleasure to everyone who is here. And I welcome you to CHLP Conference 2023. It's the maiden edition. And I'm really excited. Yes, you can clap there. Thank you. Thank you. So you're most welcome to CHLP Conference 2023, the maiden edition, which has the theme, the Nigerian Business Terrain, Impact of Recent Laws and Regulations. This conference would stir a forward-thinking conversation that finally intertwines perspectives from the private and public sectors and from legal practitioners within the room with practical understanding of the Nigerian legal and business landscape. We believe that the Nigerian economy offers abundant opportunities to businesses that are able to master the peculiarities of the environment. And the conference will speak to topical issues that are relevant and that border on business generally, the laws and that are relevant to businesses in Nigeria. And this conference is put together, like you must have known, by the CHLP team. CHLP is doing this as part of our contribution to the advancement generally of our economy. We are business lawyers, and we are very much interested in what happens in the economy. We are very much interested in what happens in the country. And so we're doing this as a way to contribute to that and to raise conversations that even beyond the room, beyond this place, can begin to impact policy, begin to impact how things are done in our country. So before the advent of CHLP, a little background. There was Horizon Expanse solicitors and advocates and Crass Venit legal practice, each solely founded by Folarin Oloyede and myself, Oheji Emmanuel E.G., respectively. These two law firms, on the 1st of June 2022, merged to create Crass Venit Horizon Legal Practice, CHLP for short. Thank you. So for those of you who raise jokes, I know Dotun raises jokes and say he pronounces that name and it's very long. Please, no excuse. We are CHLP, okay? The one you can remember, or CHLP, the .law. So CHLP is a multidisciplinary law firm that provides legal services to corporate organizations and individuals. And CHLP is committed to supporting its clients in adapting to emerging global trends. And we are very quickly will become a top option for cutting-edge legal services that support our clients' success. We have a client-centric philosophy and provide cutting-edge solutions that are not only satisfy the needs of our clients, but also help to develop and shape a new world in general. Our values as a law firm coincidentally make an acronym, CLASSIC, and it's curiosity, leadership, adaptability, simplicity, smart solutions, innovation, and client centricity. These are the 7 pillars of our ideology as an organization. So the goal of this event is a true testament to our solution-oriented practice in helping our clients and others to navigate the complexities that surround owning and running a business in Nigeria. And we do this by giving practical solutions that can be easily applied for improvement. In the course of this event, we'll have a legal background to the conversation that will set the tone for the perspective, from the perspective of our team as lawyers or as business lawyers, after which we would have our keynote address, our keynote speaker, well seated here, along with other panelists. And it will be followed by the panel discussion that will further dissect the relevant issues that will arise. So I say, have a great time here today, and thank you for coming. So before you get tired of seeing me, let me quickly bring up Folarin. Folarin would set that legal background to the conversation we're having as he takes the CHLP speech. Please welcome Folarin.
All right, good morning once again. Don't worry. It might sound like my voice was shaking, but okay. So I'm going to deliver the CHLP speech. I'm delivering it. The entire team worked on it, so that I do not stand, incur liability of laying claim to what I do not solely own. So. The brochures are being circulated now, so the speech is in there, so I'm just going to deliver it. So the Nigerian business terrain, impact of recent laws and regulations. The goal of the CHLP Conference 2023 is to assess recent laws and regulations that impact businesses in Nigeria from the perspectives of operators, enablers, and supporters. We also aim to discuss the application of the solutions available in these existing laws and regulations. Nigeria boasts of a dynamic and diverse business environment that presents both opportunities and challenges for entrepreneurs and investors. With a population of over 200 million people and abundant natural resources, the Nigerian business terrain holds immense potential for our socio-economic existence. A writer once described the business climate in Nigeria as a war zone for entrepreneurs and investors. But our team, the CHLP team, rather sees it as unique and interesting. We also observe that the Nigerian business environment is constantly evolving, due to factors such as rapidly changing government policies, global economic conditions, and social trends. Also, the country's burgeoning technology sector offers immense potential for growth and profitability. In this age and time, we dare not talk about business and not talk about technology. In many instances, laws serve as a guide for business owners. The business terrain in Nigeria is governed by several laws and regulations which serve as a framework. We'll mention just a few. Few of those laws are there. We have the CAMA. Sorry if I start using acronyms. That's the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, which governs registration of incorporation and operation of businesses in Nigeria. It's almost impossible to talk about business and not mention CAMA. And the next one is the Business Facilitation Act, the Nigerian Startup Act 2022, the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation 2019, which stems from the National Information and Technology Development Agency Act 2007. That regulation takes care of data privacy. Before now, we've not really had anything really to fall back to regarding regulation of data privacy. We have the Petroleum Industry Act, and also followed by the CBN Act, the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, the Finance Act 2020, and perhaps the most darling of them all, the fifth alteration of the Constitution, recently done by the outgone administration. Business laws and regulations in Nigeria also protect customers by setting standards for quality of goods and services, preventing anti-competitive practices, and providing avenues for consumer redress in the case of grievances. This helps to build consumer confidence in the market and ultimately benefits businesses that comply with these regulations. By providing a framework for businesses to operate, laws and regulations ensure that businesses are operating legally and transparently. This not only protects businesses but also safeguards the interests of stakeholders such as shareholders, creditors, and employees. The thing is that if you let business people, if you let them be, they could just run really wild. So that's one of the reasons why all these laws and regulations are there. Business laws and regulations also impact investor confidence. The laws and regulations provide a level of certainty and predictability for investors. Business people like risks, but uncertainty is what turns everybody off. And for a country like ours, I don't know how you're going to dodge that. But at this conference, we hope we'll be able to undo some of the uncertainty and see how we can find a way around them. So we'll take a closer look at the Business Facilitation Act and the fifth alteration to the 1999 Constitution. Remember I said earlier on that we won't take all the relevant laws and regulations because you all have not paid law school fees. So we'll just expose you to just two, which we believe are quite salient and very, very relevant. The Business Facilitation Act 2022 is a significant piece of legislation aimed at simplifying and streamlining business procedures in the country. The Act seeks to improve the environment for businesses by eliminating administrative bottlenecks, enhancing transparency in government regulations, and reducing the time and cost involved in starting, operating, and closing a business. One of the key provisions of the BFA is the establishment of a one-stop shop for business registration, licensing, and compliance in instances where a business has multiple regulatory oversight. Operators of such business can visit one location, quote and unquote. Now, it could be a physical location, it could be a virtual location, to access the concerned regulators. The initiative aims to expedite the approval processes and reduce the burden on business owners by consolidating all necessary procedures into a single platform. By doing so, time and money are saved for entrepreneurs, thereby facilitating their operations. As a way of promoting transparency, the BFA codifies the requirements outlined in the Presidential Executive Order 001 of the previous administration. The last administration at the federal government level now took steps to promote ease of doing business in Nigeria, and that came by under the Presidential Executive Order. And an executive order is limited in many ways. So that executive order has now been codified into what we now call the Business Facilitation Act. The Act also introduces amendments to the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA 2020. These amendments ease procedures such as increase in share capital and preemptive rights of shareholders. The BFA also reduces the time limit for filing return of allotment of shares, recognizes electronic share certificates and electronic voting at annual general meetings, allows virtual meetings for all companies, and sets limits on multiple directorships. These changes aim to improve corporate governance practices, promote efficiency, and align with international best practices. Furthermore, the Act brings changes to several other laws. Reason I said earlier on that the BFA is very significant is that it's perhaps one of the most recent legislations that fixes issues, or let me say, improves provisions in various other laws. It's quite unusual to have a law that touches on several other acts. So the BFA alone touches on the Customs and Excise Management Act, the Export Prohibition Act, Foreign Exchange Monitoring and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, the National Housing Fund Act, the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission Act, the Nigerian Ports Authority Act, Pension Reform Act, and the Trademark Act. The amendments made to these laws are diverse in nature, covering areas such as trade facilitation, electronic documentation, dispute resolution timelines, the scope of trademarks, and the expansion of participation in National Housing Fund, among others. Now, we must clearly state that laws are very beautiful, but there's a thing about human beings standing in the way of good things. So, as wonderful as this law is, it is important to know that the successful implementation of the BFA depends on the effective enforcement of its provisions by regulatory authorities. Let me also chip in that a number of things that you will find in the Business Facilitation Act are things I would say people should normally just do what they are supposed to do. People should just do their jobs, but here we are, we had to pass an act, and after passing that act, there has to be that political will to ensure that these laws come into effect. So the BFA 2022 is a significant step towards enhancing the ease of doing business in Nigeria. It promises to simplify procedures, reduce bureaucratic bottlenecks, and others. So the second and the last law that we'll try to speak to through this speech is the fifth alteration to the 1999 Constitution. It's one of the parting gifts of the last administration. Prior to now, we've always known power to fall under the exclusive legislative list. And exclusive legislative list means a set of things that only the legislature at the federal government level can work on, can legislate on. So an example of such is defense, currency. So when you hear things like that, you know that it's only people in Abuja that can do that. So prior to now, power too was just an Abuja thing. But with the latest alteration to the Constitution, the transfer of railways and power from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list has now taken place through the alteration number 16 and alteration number 17. A number of other things are in that alteration, that particular alteration to the Constitution, but the alteration pertaining to railway and power, we believe is very, very, very significant, because power is a major problem in Nigeria. Whether at some point they said the problem was with generation, at some point they said it's about transmission, at some point it's distribution. Bottom line is that we are not getting power in our houses. So with this alteration, the state governments are now allowed to venture into generation, transmission, and distribution of power. And so whether state governments are setting up corporations that they would own, or they would start licensing companies to provide these services, it's up to them. But there's no legal hideout any longer. You know, states before now would say, hey, when you talk to state governors, you say there's no power in Lagos State, or there's no power in this particular state. So the excuse is that, look, this thing is under the exclusive list and they can't do anything about it, really. But now that is the situation has changed, and state governments can now address the problem of epileptic power supply in Nigeria. Railway transportation in Nigeria was formerly structured to run interstate, between states, but this amendment will bring about intra-state railway transportation. Yes, we could observe that Lagos State government has been taking the initiative, really, in setting up railway lines, but I believe all of that is still being done with cooperation with the federal government and lobbying right and obtaining the necessary permissions. But now the Constitution allows the state government to venture into railway transportation, and so this should translate into more railway lines within states. So federal government had been doing railway business to connect states. So states can now, within their territory, build lines to connect towns to each other and cities to each other. So that's that about that. So on the generation of electricity now devolved to the states can now generate, transmit, and distribute electricity for the consumption of their residents. So, however, despite the positive impact of business laws and regulations, there are challenges with enforcement in Nigeria, such as weak institutional capacity, corruption, and political interference, which has limited the effectiveness of these laws and regulations. Therefore, there is a need for the government and regulatory bodies to ensure that laws and regulations are enforced effectively and consistently to create a level playing field for businesses. In closing, I'm sure you want to heave a sigh now. Okay. In closing, law and regulation making are not exclusive to the legislative and executive arms of government, respectively. Businesses from time to time make laws between and among themselves in the form of contracts. The provisions of a contract, which are not illegal, are as potent as the provisions of a statute. A business must therefore strive to hire its own sound lawmakers, quote and unquote, to ensure its contracts do not roughen the terrain it plies. I hope this conference will be a memorable and enlightening experience for you all. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Folari and Mr. Emmanuel, for the opening remark and the CHLP speech. Right about now, we will be welcoming our keynote speaker. And our keynote speaker is no other person than Dr. Olusoji Akinyele. I'll quickly read. Yes, thank you very much. I'll quickly read his profile, and we'll welcome him to read. Soji Akinyele is a trained economist, government policy expert and executive management leader with over 20 years of working experience. He currently oversees operational, technical, and strategic partnerships with the government to build globally competitive public schools and deliver transformational learning outcomes in basic education to over 1 million children across 6 states in Nigeria. Between 2017 and 2019, Soji served as an advisor technical assistant to the Nigeria's past Vice President, His Excellency, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN GCON, where he implemented ease of doing business policy reforms at both national and subnational levels. He was a core member of the Presidential Enabling Business Environments Council, which achieved an unprecedented 39-place improvement in Nigeria's World Bank Doing Business rankings. In 2021, he was awarded a Doctor of Economics degree, honoris causa, by the Commonwealth University in recognition of his achievements in economic policy research, reforms, analysis, and implementation. He is an alumnus of the University of Lagos, Lagos Business School, London, Bladvanik School of Government, Oxford University, and a fellow of the Institute of Management Consultants. Ladies and gentlemen, with a standing ovation and a round of applause, please let's make welcome Dr. Soji Akinyele. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to stand on the protocols established by my learned colleagues, and that's an inside joke, but I will let you in on it while we get the slides up. You can just let me know once the slides are ready. Secondly, in honor to my learned colleagues, I will do a very simple pitch of the CHLP business, at no charge to them, just to let you know why you need, business lawyers and partners such as CHLP. And I've started already, if you noticed. Okay. And then I will encourage you to actually, if you got a copy of that brochure, please, when you get back to your offices, your homes, please read that speech again. It's actually, well researched, very insightful, and perhaps, will point you into the right directions as we begin to consider the Nigerian business terrain and the impact of laws and regulations to your business. Because at the end of the day, it's about your business and my business. Okay, with that said, I have also taken, I think my wife calls it poetic license, or is it creative license, to adjust the topic and to step back a little, in the sense that if you must understand the impact of law and regulations, and we'll come to the difference between the two, first, you must agree that there is actually a value to business in terms of understanding that impact and who actually implements, if you like, or authors laws and regulations. One word, government. So I want to make a case for the business value of government. Next slide, please. I want to make a case for the business value of government, largely because we have the benefit of a new government in place. And for those of you that are lobbyists in the room, you notice that you now have a new job in the sense, because you are doing all the political calculations and you're wondering who is who and who is not who, because the past 8 years was pretty formed. We knew what was going on, but now, just by one inaugural speech, everyone is, the rug has been pulled off our feet in the sense. And so when you think of government, you must think of government as a critical success factor in any business or economic equation. Think about it. Students of economics, who may be in the room, you hear about the Keynesian model and the intervention of government spending as the way out of recession. Government licenses, we just talked about, the enabling business legislation from policy direction to political will, markets rise and fall on the back of government actions and pronouncements. Case in point, subsidy is okay. And we'll look at that shortly. But in terms of value, it's actually quantifiable when you think about it. And this is a 2014 analysis done by McKinsey, if I remember, showing that most industries enjoy about a 30% improvement in business value. Business value to you may mean return on investments, profit margins, returns on equity, whatever you think of business value as. When CEOs were asked this question, right, about 30% of them explained or agreed that there was some value in engaging with government. And please just follow the premise. If you get into the financial sector, which we all know is a heavily regulated sector in any country at all, then that value immediately rises to about 50% because your regulator in the financial sector is called an apex regulator for a reason. Emphasis on apex, in a sense. So if you were to rank your stakeholders any day, no matter what business category you fall into, small, medium, large, corporate, if you were to rank your top 3 stakeholders, you will most likely, if there are some HR people in the room, they will argue that people first. If there are sales people in the room, they will argue clients first, right? But if you're a CEO in the room and you're in Nigeria, you may argue government first. So in whatever way you rank them, your top 3 stakeholders, the government falls within, top 3. And that is why I'm making that case for business value. During the COVID era, there was perhaps, a more compelling case to engage government. Why? Because at that point, you realized how powerful government was. That a government of the day could actually lock you up in your homes, right, and tell you not to come out at the risk of being locked up in an isolation center. That is government power. And so in engaging government, right, that was the only way certain businesses could survive. Because many of the policies pre-COVID, right, were policies, and I'm using a few words interchangeably, but we will then break them down, were policies that could only work within a physical construct, i.e. you and I sitting here today. But what COVID threw across the world was that we definitely then had to do things remotely, telepathically, if possible, virtually. But the average law, right, in any country at all was not prepared for that, mostly, particularly in developing economies. And so the lawyers in the room will tell you that proxy, annual general meetings, if you like, did not exist, or a virtual mode for that was not codified in law, and so could not happen unless the CAC and the SEC and perhaps the Ministry of Justice come together and very quickly scribble something and immediately stamp it in order to allow AGMs to hold. And if the AGMs did not hold, then shareholders could not get dividends, directors could not be reappointed, auditors could not be paid, and all of that. Think about the chain effect of that. That is the business value in engaging government. And because government was engaged during that time, certain businesses were classified as essential businesses and others non-essential businesses. And so if you were to plot a graph of the COVID era, you'll find out that the essential businesses were the ones in profit and the non-essential businesses were the ones perhaps not in profit. So how then, do you engage engage government to transfer yourself from a non-essential business to an essential business? Because some people did that, or some organizations or some industries did that. So I'm trying to build up that case and let you realize why it is important to pay attention to the Nigerian business terrain, but most importantly, the laws and the legislations, the laws, regulations, and the policies, as my learned colleagues have shown you through their speech, why you need to pay attention to all those funny things. 5th alteration, 17th alteration, alteration 7, executive order 1. It can be boring, it can sound very unconvincing, but my work here is to show you that it actually impacts the bottle of water on the table, or even the sweet that I just had before coming up here. So this is a quote from Efosa Ojomo. He's a a co-author of The Prosperity Paradox, and he's, I believe, the director of the Christensen Institute in Harvard. And he says there in here, during the COVID era, he analyzed about 100 to 200 top CEOs across the world, and particularly in emerging markets as well. And 50% of them, or 57% of them, agreed that devoting significant time and energy, please listen to this, devoting significant time and energy in relating with the state, in this case government, during a pandemic, was one of the strategies that allowed them, break even or break through or break out beyond all the common things that they will have done. So what set them apart was engaging government. And in engaging government means understanding the laws, the regulations, and the policies. Okay. So what that then means, for business in Nigeria, and I say this in my office all the time, and by the way, the comments that I make here are my personal comments and my personal views, and do not represent the views of my organization, or any affiliated organization, as some of my my learned colleagues and co-panelists will know. And one of the things I've been saying, in the past probably 2 or 3 months, since the elections were clear and out, was that Nigeria is not a country. Please, don't quote me out of context, all right? Nigeria is not a country. Nigeria is 36 states and the FCT. So Nigeria is literally 36 opportunities and the FCT, or 774 opportunities, or 250 ethnic groups or opportunities, or 500 languages or opportunities. In a sense, what I'm trying to say is that Nigeria and the opportunities that it presents as a business terrain is not one opportunity, right? It's a multiple, it's a plethora of opportunities that you then, based on your approach to business and your strategy to engage in government, decide which opportunity you engage with. And notice all I'll be talking about today are opportunities. If you need to know about the negatives, please go on social media. Okay. Okay. So what this picture, what slide are we on? Oh, okay, I'm moving slides. All right, so we're on slide 6. Can you move? All right, thank you. So I need to tell you next slide, correct? Okay, so I'll do that. All right. Yes, not slide 6. 6. Okay, so it's 4 for you. Slide 4 for you. Slide 4. Thank you. Okay. So we are projecting on PDF, and so I think some part of that is cut off. If there's anyone that can help us make sure that works properly. Any IT person in the room? Okay, thank you. All right. So we're on slide 4, and what I'm trying to show here really is a cross-section of our governors today. That picture you see is a picture of 15 APC state governors, 9 PDP state governors, 1 LP state governor, but more importantly, let's leave the politics out of it, all right? We are now one Nigeria, correct? Okay? More importantly, 17 newly elected governors, 9 re-elected governors. So I know we're in Lagos, and this is a re-elected government, right? But if you were a business operating across the states, you currently have 17 new slates to play on, or 17 new canvases to paint on, literally. In the sense that we know that the moment there is a change of guard, right, certain things are thrown up, certain things are thrown out, certain things are brought in. So the recalibration of the state economy in which you are playing, Kano, Kaduna, right, Rivers, Cross River, the recalibration of those state economies present opportunities for you today. And your ability to engage with those state economies, understand the laws, regulations, and policies that exist in those states, as you've heard about the exclusive and concurrent list, and there's also a residual list. So understand that even states have the powers to, generate or, create laws, institute regulations, and policies. So the multi-sectoral interests, and that's what I'm trying to say here, in Nigeria, your business interests, your business objectives, right, as diverse as they may be, therefore, in connection to policy, laws, and regulations, needs also a multi-sectoral approach, but that approach must be dedicated in the sense that you need to read the CHLP speech. Right? You need to understand what exactly is going on in the Nigerian business terrain as it matters to laws, regulations, and policies. And as my learned colleague said, because you have not, paid legal fees, we will not deep dive into that. Next slide, please. So moving away from that, right, but in the same thread of thought, you then see that the structure of the Nigerian economy in itself also then throws up opportunities for you. Because with a new government comes new priorities, new, focus areas in terms of sectors. And so if you were in the, manufacturing space, or if you were in the agric space, you then should be thinking about, and I know that this sounds obvious, but sometimes repeating it or hearing someone other than yourself say it, just jigs your memory, and you realize that you've lost, lost that practice. So today, and I was just telling someone that the manufacturing sector that we used to say accounted for less than 10% of the Nigerian economy now accounts for 16% of the Nigerian economy. Majority of that is food and beverages. I forget the other two now, right? But very important, cement, yes, food and beverages, cement, and construction. Well, cement sort of, in a sense. So the question is, are you playing in that space? What are the policies, what are the laws, what are the regulations that engage in that space, and what are you doing about them? So I'm trying to push and make a case for dedicated effort. Next slide, please. Someone has left the laptop. Okay. So on the next slide, I asked the question, is it news or noise? And let's see what that looks like. So you just press the down button. Thank you. And how many more minutes do I have? Okay. Thank you. So again, we are talking about, dedicated approach to understanding government policy. I've shown you that right now, policy is connected to the politics in the sense that, like I said, you have 17 new elected governors. What are those opportunities that exist for you? In fact, if you're just thinking about them, you're late. but, but it's still a good thing to think about, right? And then I've shown you the structure of the economy and just understanding that we are still agriculture, manufacturing, services, telecoms, right? Food and beverages, accommodation and things like that, hospitality. But then, as we move closer, and I like the topic that was given to me, the impact of recent business laws and regulations, the impact of recent laws and regulation on business. So, if you take the keyword there for me is recent, then you see why I talk about news or noise. Because while I'm giving my own inaugural speech here, and I hope that it doesn't generate the kind of impact that a previous inaugural speech just 3 days ago generated, and is still reverberating across the country, right? But the question is it news or is it noise? Fuel subsidy is gone, Tinubu declares. I have no magic wand, Reverend Father Alia declares. I will follow Wike's steps, Fubara declares. Sanwo-Olu sets themes plus agenda for second term. These news items suggest a particular policy direction of government. So the question is, what is that policy direction and how does it impact your business? There is no right or wrong answer, and that's why I love literature, because you just need to argue your case, and then hopefully you can get it through. So, but just for the benefit of, intellectual rigor, we are seeing here that fuel subsidy is gone, is a disruptive policy, is a disruptor. Disruptive here being that technology word that we all use. So in this case, I mean it positively. You can argue on the negative, but I will stay on the positive, okay? All right, so it's a positive disruptor. I have no magic wand suggests that don't expect a miracle on day one. This is a very realistic cleric. I will follow Wike's footsteps, suggests that this is status quo, in the sense that he's just going to, follow those steps. And you should actually read his speech, because he spends the first 3 or 5 paragraphs thanking, and I quote him, his boss, his, there's a word that was used there, almost like provider, benefactor, thank you, that's the word, benefactor. Those are very strong words for a state governor to use for an outgone state governor. So those kind of words suggest a particular, political or policy mindset. And if you understand it, then you can play the game. So it's not right, it's not wrong. The point is, do you understand it and what's the impact on your business? So this is not about, should he have said that, should he not have said that? That's different. But what we're saying is, as a business person, if you're operating in that state, then you should understand that he will follow Wike's steps. And then, in Lagos State, Governor Sanwo-Olu says themes plus agenda. And what that really means is that he's going to continue what he's been doing and perhaps, take it up a little. Why? He's in his second term. Shouldn't he be slowing things down? Well, perhaps he's in legacy mode. Perhaps he has other ambitions later down the line. If you understand some of these things, then you understand the direction of laws, of regulations, and policy. And now I'm emphasizing policy, because policy, we'll get to that point, is that one that is not necessarily backed by law, right, but is more by the influence or the thought process of the policy actor in this case. So it's backed by the ability of the policy actor to enforce, all by himself or all by just the authority that he has without codifying it. And I'll ask some very important questions here. So let's look at one more. Again, just putting out the thoughts there about this. This is an announcement effect, that this is, the highest rally you found in one day, since 1999 at the inauguration of a new president. So you could call it the Tinubu bounce or the announcement effect. How long will this last? What is the signal for the market for those of you that are, capital market investors or speculators? This is useful because that rally is still on, last time I checked. So what I'm trying to prove here, and show is that when you think about laws, regulations, and policies, the impact on your business is multi-sectoral, is multidimensional. It affects investment income. It affects your balance sheet, affects your P&L, affects your people culture, right? Affects even your board structure, as you've seen in the CHLP speech. So then I come to the elephant in the room, and we talk about the fuel subsidy. But I'm throwing out an intellectual question here, and I'm hoping the lawyers can resolve this. Is the fuel subsidy a law, a regulation, or a policy? Discuss. 20 marks. 20 marks. Because it's so powerful that you really have to think that what exactly is this thing? So you may argue that it's a law, in the sense that some have said it dates back to the Price Act, I think, of 1970 or thereabout. You may argue that it's a regulation, in the sense that, the PPRA regulates price, and by reason of that, they can only sell at a particular price, and then the differential is paid off or augmented. So technically it's a regulation. And then you argue that it's just a policy, because in the sense, right now, in not being budgeted for, poof, hopefully by June 30. So what exactly is it, and why is it so powerful? That is what you need to think about when you hear any government announcement, when you hear about any law, any regulation, or any policy. Because this fuel subsidy, for the sake of this, discourse, is actually both a law, a regulation, and a policy. And that's where it derives all its powers from, such that it determines how much that bottle of water is, even though that's not even the fuel itself. Law, regulation, or policy. I mean, you can pick and choose here, right? So we have some laws here, we have some regulations here, we have some policies here. But you can see that policies in themselves, even though drawn from laws, drawn from, regulation, right, may be initiatives of the particular holder of the regulatory position, right? So the FX regime we're in is largely because of the, the holder of the central bank position that we have today. If that person exits constitutionally by next year, June, I believe, right? That position may change. If the current president decides to adjust, his tenure and, explores the constitution. So if you are an importer and exporter in the room, or again, if you're an FX speculator, or, you have clients and, there's an FX throughput into your business, then you should pay attention a little more to what is going on right now and perhaps read Mr. President's speech again to see the signals as to what he may do with FX policy. Understanding that there's actually a constitutional way to achieve this. That's the last. You need to put that slide. It's very important for them. Okay. So this is why you need business lawyers like Folari and Oheji Emmanuel, because from the CHL speech that I just read in the brochure, they get it. And if they get it, you should be in business with them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olusoji Akinyele, for that brilliant speech. So to the next speaker, okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm a little shaken, because it is probably because he's also my pastor. So when you have your pastor seated and you are talking and you are about to call him up and you're like, should I say Pastor Wale or say Mr. Wale? Which one? But as it is, this is a corporate event and we'll be addressing you as Mr. Wale Ekundayo, sir. So I'll quickly read his profile and then we'll bring him up. Wale Ekundayo is a seasoned marketing and communications expert. He is the founder and current vice president of Cerebre Digital with over 25 years experience in the industry. He has amassed vast knowledge and insight in marketing and communication. Since Cerebre is strategically located in 3 African countries, Wale has worked with leading global continental brands looking to reach the continent of Africa. As a graduate of microbiology, his profound love for marketing and communication motivated him to start a career in communication and marketing 12 years ago when he worked for Low Linters, the first advertising agency in Nigeria. He later worked with other prestigious marketing agencies, serving in different positions, including managing director. The core of his career has always hinged on delivering original ideas that add significant value to clients' brands. Wale has worked with notable brands which include Microsoft Nigeria, First Bank Nigeria, EcoBank, Wema Bank, Ikeja HMO, Vlisco, House of Chi, Dabur, Pepsi, and Nigeria Breweries. One of Wale's notable achievements was running an activation for the Unilever Nigeria Lifebuoy brand, which got into the Guinness Book of Records for the largest number of children washing their hands at the same time on Global Hand Washing Day. Please feel very welcome, Mr. Wale Ekundayo. You're welcome, sir.
I'm incredibly honored to be here taking this. I've got about 10 minutes. I'm just going to do within 10 minutes what I would call a business case, making a business case for what we currently have in our space. No doubt that what has become the subject of conversation around now is the removal of subsidy, and it seems like each and every day something new is happening. It's like the message of God happening new every day. So today is the equalization of exchange rates, some sorts, devaluation of Naira, to be specific. So I'm making a case here this morning because I've got about 10 minutes. Can you put the third slide on? You would recall that there was 24th century way back, maybe as far back as 21 years ago, and they were laying fibers and all of that. Most people didn't understand the dynamics of that business. Now today, you can lay fiber without the government actually asking you for a dime. I hope you know there is a policy that you lay fiber today and no government will have to pay you. I mean, you don't have to pay them any money for laying fiber. Back then, it wasn't so. For every centimeter you dig, you are paying through your nose. And I said to myself, I said, these guys have laid the foundations for what people are enjoying today. So how then do we begin to change the dynamics in terms of ensuring that in the end, profitability is the key and leveraging on that? So I'm going to just focus on the numbers now. Can you go to where I put in scary numbers to know? So there are scary numbers to know. Over 61%. I think that should be, yes, that's it. All right. Based on the reports, which is Business Day, 61%, it is stated that at the rate of, Dr. Soji mentioned that 61% has a high rate of startup failures. So as much as we speak about successful businesses, over 61% still has that rate of startup failures. And I'm also going to be making a pitch for my learned colleagues here as well in my final stage. Now, I would say this, that this kind of learnings actually cost us quite a lot of money starting up. If I had known, some of these things would have changed the dynamics from the beginning. You know, we started out without a lawyer. We only called a lawyer to just do a business registration. But there were more opportunities wherein we found out later that these opportunities were there for us for taking. So 18% approximately, that's where, the significant portion of are influenced by the emergence of new regulations of various interventions or intervals. And 45%, roughly 45% of businesses face difficulties in scaling their operations due to inability to comply with legal and regulatory policies. So right now, you see a Google who does not really have they claim they have a representation in Nigeria, but they really don't have a representation in Nigeria. And then you're seeing them paying taxes off the back of every transaction. So if you do a 1 trillion, oh, by the way, in a month, they cannot run advertising over 1 trillion naira through just one system. And then they are paying 7.5% off of that without any form of negotiation. That actually is a conversation you should be picking up with people like that, because really there are tax rebates now, especially when you are able to actually begin to do some things, with the government. So people are getting tax rebates, and you can see the Mr. President making mention of the fact that they are willing to have conversations with businesses who are ready to use their tax rebates for specific production or things within the economy. Too much to handle. Now let's go back home to where I play right now. So you see an APCON evolve into ACON, all right? And now they have multiple policies on ground that speaks to why you shouldn't do business the way you do business anymore. So primarily, you have got to vet every single advertorial that is going on, whether online, well, it used to be physically, but we now see that there are no more billboards. Or when you go on the roads, you hardly would see any billboards being shown any advertising on those billboards anymore. What that means is that it's actually a lot more expensive than normal. So they've gone online for every single policy or every single advert that you're running. People are charging you for that. Now, let me go to the last case, which is the case study for ACON. The case study. So ACON brings new laws to limelight. So what are these laws? Advertisers are required to obtain a license from ACON before running an advertisement. So restriction on ads, no foreign models. So before now, we would have models, especially when you play not just in Nigeria, you're playing in different multi-countries. You can actually use a neutral person, all right? No foreign models, again, that's their law. And it says local content must be increased. And then they go to increased penalties. So usually, most agencies got a penalty fine or fine of some sort during the Easter break, saying that, you can't advertise Jesus the way you should advertise Jesus because his resurrection. Every single agency got a penalty. Now, we're querying that penalty that you can't know more than the brands, and the brands are basically essentially advertising a certain thing. This same thing, it's a conversation that is ongoing. And then you can begin to see how these things are impacting on the laws. But in the end, and I make a case for this, in the end, whatever it is that you do, within this generation, within this dispensation, you've got to find a way to then do policies that will profit you. Last slide, or second to the last slide, what's noting? You must have a legal team. Now, I'm not making a case, I'm making a case indirectly for CHPL, right? But most importantly, it is extremely important that you do this not only when you want to buy land, because there's a nuance that when you need a land, just speak to a lawyer, so they do the due diligence. But most importantly, for your business. And one of the things certain banks, let me not mention their names, have taken it upon themselves to begin to help startups. So provide them with accountants, most small, medium enterprise, provide them with legal framework that allows their businesses to thrive, leverage on opportunities that are existing within the same legal space so that they can actually thrive and go ahead. I'm sure most people don't know, in the first year of your business, you really don't need to pay tax, and most people are not aware of that, and people are falling prey to some of those things. So I leave you with these notes. Be proactive, get ahead of the curve by understanding the regulations that apply to your businesses, and make sure you are compliant. Invest in training your employees to ensure that they are well informed about the regulations that apply to your business and how to comply with them. Take a proactive stance rather than waiting for regulators to approach you. Be proactive in recognizing and resolving potential regulatory concerns. Thank you so much. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Pastor Wale. Be proactive, be compliant. Please, a round of applause once again for Mr. Wale Ekundayo. Yes, I used both. My family members observed. Okay, at the beginning of this wonderful conference, I gave out a very small assignment. I said to people to meet 3 people, ask for their first name, ask for their surname, and what they do for a living, and their best meal. So it's about time that I give out a few gifts that I have. What the gifts are, don't ask me, please. I kindly ask you. Do not ask me what the gifts are. You shall get a gift. That's the most important part of it. So I'll be going around to just ask a few of us. So if you don't remember, it's okay to quickly go ahead now and ask whoever you met and say, please remind me. The question might just be coming my way. So I don't know whether to start first with a lady or with a gentleman. Okay, they say ladies first, so I'm going to do ladies first. When I come to you, please don't say no. I kindly ask you. When I come to you, please don't say no. Yes, ma'am. Okay. I will spare you because you weren't here at the beginning. So I know a few people who were here at the beginning. So Uncle Tola, thank you very much, sir. I just had to come to you. So one person that you met, their first name, their surname, what they do for a living, and their best meal. Okay.
But she doesn't have any favorite food.
She doesn't have any favorite food. So what does she do for a living?
She's a lawyer.
She's a lawyer. So Damola, is he correct? She is actually Debola. Uncle Tola, you not try. you not try. So I hold on to my gift. So, ma'am, were you here at the beginning, ma'am? No, you weren't. Okay. Because of that, and that alone is why I will let you go. Okay, it's just easy for me to come to you. You know that. It feels very natural to come to you. So who did you meet?
I met Fola. Fola? No, not my husband. Fola is an architect and is best food anything that has plantain in it.
Please, Fola, whoever you are, awesome. Please, a round of applause for her, please. I'll ask only one more person, so that we can make sure to make it go round very well. So, ma'am, in the lemon top, you weren't here at the beginning. Oh, ma'am, were you here at the beginning? You weren't. Interesting. So what are we going to do now? I'm making sure not to go towards our panelists so that I don't put them on the spot. They're already on the spot, so I don't want to make an extra case. He got every other detail except for your name. Hey, he almost. You could be, but you're not. Well, you're a lawyer, so, I mean, it's absolutely expected for you to make a case for him. Don't worry, he's my elder brother, so we know how to. Okay, let's just put our hands together for ourselves, and I hope that we're having a wonderful time. So right about now, we will be going into the panel session, and on this panel, we'll have all our panelists on the seats. I have read our keynote speaker and Mr. Awale Ekundayo's profile, so I'll just read the wonderful ladies on the panel profiles and have them take their seats. So I'll be starting with Abiola Babatunde Ojo, a versatile and commercially astute senior management executive with over 19 years multifaceted experience across the banking and oil and gas industries, spearheading various aspects of corporate management and driving successful business strategies and initiatives. Abiola's expertise lies in leading corporate development efforts, operational strategies, and improvement initiatives to achieve defined goals and expand market share. She is adept at overseeing a wide variety of operational and fiscal responsibilities to ensure optimal business performance and realize significant revenue enhancements, whilst recording success in team building, motivation, and leadership positions. She presently works at Prudent Energy and Services Limited and Indigenous Oil and Gas Services Limited. In her role as Executive Director, Chief Commercial Officer, Abiola led the team that built the company's strong client base, setting a record of over 200% growth in turnover and profitability within 2 years, and has been recognized by the organization for many other notable contributions. She has overall responsibility for broadening market share and integrated commercial success of the organization. Abiola is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Nigeria and as an associate member of Chartered Institute of Taxation Nigeria. She is an alumnus of the prestigious University of Ibadan, having graduated with a BSc degree in statistics from the institution and a master's degree in corporate governance from Leeds Beckett University, Leeds, United Kingdom. Please, let's put our hands together for her as she takes her seat. Thank you very much, ma'am. You're most welcome. Please, ma'am, we'll have you sit in the middle here. Thank you for coming. Okay. So there's a beautiful name that I have asked a few times how to pronounce so that I'm making sure I'm not murdering the name. And they told me it is Cherise. I got that right. Awesome. So please, a round of applause for me. Cherise Alexander is a relationship builder and an experienced fund manager with over 18 years work experience in the financial services industry. Cherise has interfacing with potential investors and lenders alike, As WAT's Chief Business Officer, Cherise is tasked with assisting in structuring, financing, and investing opportunities for WAT's current and future project lists. Cherise has several years of experience in the finance sector in strategizing and structuring suitable financing options for clients. Prior to joining WAT, Cherise's main area of business was centralized around developing valuable relationships with consumer and commercial lending partners. Please let's make welcome Cherise Alexander. You're most welcome, ma'am. You're most welcome. Please have your seat in the middle as well. Thank you. Okay, to the gentlemen on the panel, Dr. Olusoji Akinyele, once again. A round of applause, please. And Mr. Wale Ekundayo. Please make your way, sirs. Thank you very much. Okay, to handle this session, I will be handing over to the CHLP partners. That's Mr. Folari and Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you very much.
All right. Distinguished guests, once again, let me, protocol demands. Our esteemed panelists, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you're once again welcome. This discussion would not need to take as long as we probably have planned, because the conversation has been well established from the beginning by the exceptional presentation made by our keynote speaker earlier, and then also one of the panelists making a very good presentation in the course of the event. So we'll dive right in. So you're most welcome, Cherise and Mrs. Babatunde Ojo. You're most welcome. We've already welcomed okay, and welcome to Dr. Soji, and welcome Mr. Wale Ekundayo. So would get to want to hear from Cherise first. Let's hear from you. You, Cherise, if you heard the profile read, is an executive director at WAT Renewables Energy, and WAT Renewables doing an exceptional work. They're really doing great and investing in that space. Thank you. They're doing well and investing in that space. So I would want to hear the experience of WAT. We've heard Mr. Ekundayo give his presentation from his experience. We've heard Dr. Soji also say his experience in the course of their presentations. Can we hear the WAT story, the WAT Renewables story? How has it been running business for the past years? And what has helped you to stay resilient and tenacious? Could we hear?
Thank you.
Yes.
For us, we've been operating in Nigeria since 2018, and specifically what we do here is we are a sustainable development company that transitions businesses from diesel-generated power over to renewable energy or solar hybrid solution. And so what's allowed us to be, you put some very impressive statistics up. Thank you. I was terrified at those numbers and actually patted myself on the back that we've made it. And we're not part of the 61%, knock on wood. But I think the reason why we've been so fortunate is that with our tenacity is a couple of things. We've leveraged our relationships, and as we can probably all attest to, leveraging those relationships, government being one of them, is absolutely paramount and tantamount. And we've done that with our government. Our parent company is a Canadian company. We do have a Nigerian entity here, and we've really reached out to government and forged those relationships, and they've been absolutely so supportive in supporting our work in what we export. So from Canada, we export power, essentially being a power provider here. So that's one thing that's allowed us to be very successful. And then, of course, leveraging the relationships, as you showed, with our partners and our clients, and of course our staff and our employees and all of those ones. But number one, I would say, is absolutely leveraging the relationship with our government and the regulators.
Oh, okay. Can you just, for a moment, before we move to Mrs. Babatunde Ojo, you said something about managing your relationship with the government and the regulators. How's that been with you so far?
From the Nigerian perspective, it's been pretty good. Our installations, we managed to keep them in a fairly safe and comfortable space, so our relationship with the regulators is straightforward and seamless. We haven't had any issues, and we were very preemptive within that. So we talked about understanding the regulations. We were very much ahead of the game when we were understanding the space we were moving into, the regulatory bodies that we needed to liaise with, and what they needed in order for us to work within the space. And of course, as we've grown and expanded, it's the first question that lenders and equity partners ask alike, which is, what is your relationship like with the regulators? So I'd say we've done a fairly good job of managing that relationship with the regulators, and it's been pretty good.
That's great to hear. Can we put our hands together for Cherise? They are doing a great job. We have some insight into some of the things that Watt Renewables is currently doing. And recently I heard some business persons talking about one of our biggest people in the country, let me not mention the name, and the politics of relating with the regulators. And he said it in some way of a joke, but was talking about how political the relationship can get. I know Watt Renewables has had to deal with that to some extent, but we would leave that there for now. So now, can we hear from Mrs. Babatunde Ojo? It's good to, can we put our hands together for once more? Welcome on the panel. We welcome the other men more, so let's balance it out. So, I think we should start from that same perspective as well, talking about how Prudent Energy and Services Limited has been in business in Nigeria for quite some time, over a decade, I believe. And you've had to relate in the oil and gas sector. And how has it been? How have you dealt with the current legal framework and the regulatory framework in the country? How have you dealt with it? And how have you used that for success? We're trying to have some context with businesses that have practically had experiences to give us their experiences about how it has been working with the regulatory environment in Nigeria.
Let me start by congratulating CHLP on this maiden edition of their annual conference, because this is a laudable one, and we hope that it will continue. And I also want to thank the organizers of the event for considering me a panelist at this event, because I can see very learned fellow here, and I'm beginning to feel, am I sure I'm but I think I'm safe. The idea is just to hear from us. Okay, so in Prudent Energy, maybe I should just give you a brief background of what we do so you can understand where I'm coming from. So we, as mentioned earlier, we are an indigenous oil and gas company. We operate in the midstream and downstream sector of the oil and gas industry. And we've got assets and infrastructures that enables us deliver quality goods and services across the entire energy space. So I'm just trying to make it brief so that I don't take much of your time. But if you really want to know about it, because I'm not sure I paid for adverts, so if you want to know about what we do, you can actually go check what we do, because it's not about us, it's about CHLP. So like every other business in Nigeria, we, of course, operate under the Nigeria legal and regulatory framework. And we all know that the legal and regulatory framework is what guides the way businesses are done in Nigeria. So for the purpose of this panel session, I'm just going to be speaking to two that are very key, two of the key relevant acts or regulations that are peculiar to our own industry. And firstly, I would like to start with PIA, because the theme for the session is about the recent laws, not just any law. So PIA, as we all know, is one of the most recent laws that affects the petroleum industry. It is the law that speaks to the legal governance, fiscal, whatever it is about, speaks to the petroleum industry. So when the law was passed into law, it was a very welcome idea for those of us in that industry, because it is a long-awaited bill. And even the experts, the PwC and KB, the likes of KPMG, were like, oh, this is the most audacious attempt by the government to overhaul the petroleum industry. And we were all excited when it came, because it speaks to every aspect of the industry: downstream, upstream, midstream, host community, local content, regulation, and even the future of energy, the gas industry. So when it was passed into law, we took our time to really see how this would affect us, because considering how robust it is, if it is well implemented, it will provide clarity, guidance, and so many other directions as to how the stakeholders of that industry can actually benefit from that law. Because we actually took our time, because I hear the keynote speaker say, and sorry, I came in a bit late, I missed the CHL speech, but then I could pick one or two things from the guest speaker when he was saying that it's not just to have this law, how does it impact your business? So at that point in time, maybe what we didn't do was to bring in lawyers. Either we have our own in-house lawyer, but then to bring in external lawyers to actually interpret what this law is for us. But then, at the moment, where are we on that law? Implementation we're still a far cry from implementation. So no matter how good or how the intent of the government in enacting a law, as long as there is no implementation, it's going to just be like an ordinary paper. So yes, we have some of this law, we are looking at it, but how implemented are they? And then it's not even just to implement these laws. Are there infrastructures in place that will enable the implementation to come through, to work for us? So even if today, for instance, the PIA has already, so this subsidy that we've all been crying, we are all saying, subsidy is gone. The new government, the new administration came and said subsidy is gone. In the PIA, there's provision for subsidy, full deregulation. So it's not something new. If you go to the PIA Act, it's been there. But because there is no implementation, we all think this subsidy is a new policy, or Tinubu came and the new government came and they just want to, he wants to bombard us with so many. So it is important we pay attention to these laws, especially the ones that affect our business most. So like I said, even though we have these laws, we are still a far cry from implementing some of these laws. And then secondly, I want to speak on the Finance Act 2021, which is another one that was recently amended. So Finance Act is the one that speaks to SITA. Sorry, I'm not learned, but at least I have an idea of how it affects our business. Speak to SITA. SITA is the one that imposes tax on businesses and deduction of withholding tax. And we have the VAT Act, the CGT, and all that. So in 2019-2020, when the Finance Act was signed into law, we were excited because there was a sort of succor for us. The SITA the income tax rate was reduced from 0.5 to 0.25. So for us in the industry, we're excited. Oh, this is a tax reduction. We can make some tax savings. But alas, it didn't last. After 2 years, right? After 2 years, we reverted to status quo. Even though, as the keynote speaker said, some of these laws are what generates revenue for the government. But then, in coming up with these laws, how are you balancing it to the extent that this burden you're posing on them on one side, there are palliatives to cushion the effect of the tax on them? Yes, we are paying this tax, but where are the infrastructures we are supposed to be seeing the effect on? The infrastructures are not there. So it goes beyond just understanding these laws. Are these laws really, how are they helping us? So it's beyond just the organizations knowing the laws. Our governments also have a lot to do in terms of ensuring that these laws are not just papers, they are there to help the masses, help organization. And before I end, I also want to speak on something the keynote speaker said about understanding the laws. I'm sure it would have been in the address of CHLP. So in this same Finance Act, there is this law that is called Pioneer Status. Pioneer Status for us in my own industry. So if you are in the gas industry, LPG, you can take a tax break for I think 3 to 5 years or so. So we didn't know on time until like 2 or 3 years later, but good enough, we're still within that window. We're almost even losing that opportunity. So if we had looked at that law as improperly the way we should, probably we should have, maybe would have even gotten more than what we get. So I just want to align with all what the speakers have been saying, that it is good for us to understand the laws that are relevant to our business. Let's understand it. Even if we need the services of the like of CHLP, and like others are not marketing CHLP, but they brought us here, so we need to speak about them. Let's ensure that we always pay attention to these laws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That's some okay, Folarin.
All right. She said earlier on that when they had not involved external counsel. So I guess the concluding part of that is that CHLP came in, and let me just quickly acknowledge the presence of Olayo Julawa, in-house counsel of Prudent Energy. She's our connect in there, so if she doesn't call us, we don't go anywhere. So the experience really, while we started working with Prudent Energy, is that those complex contracts, those knotty regulatory issues, because regulations flow from the acts themselves, and the challenges actually really come from the regulations, because the act would give a broad covering. Then a minister sits in his office and writes how things will go. And so something that we've been doing very well regarding our relationship with clients, and particularly Prudent Energy, is to see how they benefit more from relationships with regulators and in complex contracts. And so the PIA, as voluminous as it is, Mrs. Babatunde Ojo, you don't need to worry your head. So you know, we're always one call away. So that's I'll just stop there.
Thank you very much for that. So Mrs. Babatunde Ojo spoke about implementation of laws just now. We've had this conversation before. I am one who actually does not believe that general statement people say about too many laws. There are too many laws in the country, or Nigeria has too many laws. In the course of the keynote speaker's speech, he was talking about the impact of policies, laws, and regulations, and also Mr. Wale Ekundayo spoke about always quick thinking. Things are changing really fast. Laws are actually supposed to be changing as fast as things are changing in the world. So Nigeria actually does not have enough laws yet. That's the truth. Yes, I know we have to do something about the implementation, but we have to create adequate laws. Now, you check about the laws. How adequate are they? Secondly, so in the 21st century, we still have laws that are prescribing fines in Kobo in the country. And we actually need to develop better legal framework of things. And then following, also adding to what Folarin just mentioned about how regulations can come out of. Regulations are usually hinged on laws. And that's what gives them the force of legality. Even though a minister can sit in his office and write them, but the law has stated that so and so minister shall have the powers to which is why you should take lessons from what the keynote speaker said earlier, that you need to check the body language of the people, the actors in the game. What are they saying? Who are they? They can change things very significantly for your business.
So who is that regulator? Who is the local government person, that issues tickets, maybe for vehicle licenses or something, or Uber. Okay, so you're running Uber, right? What licenses do you need beyond just getting on the Uber platform itself? Right? Because in a society like Lagos, those things are actually working, and those things could actually cripple activity. I give you a case in point. I'm just being very, very vulnerable. I know this is online. I once violated a traffic offense in Lagos State, right? And with all the begging, I couldn't get out of it. Begging. So they took me to the office, right? There is the option to either go to the mobile court, or what's that thing called? Pay. Accept that you committed the offense, and then you pay it off as a waiver. So at the point of payment, the government official asked me that am I a taxpayer. Fortunately, I am. So I gave him my tax ID. In giving him my tax ID, he punched it into the document or into the device, and he called my middle name. Nobody in this room knows my middle name. I was impressed, even at the point of violating a traffic offense. So I'm just trying to say that, so there are pockets, there are oases of success in government, right? And there are things that work. So don't just, bucket everything and say, it's bad. No, you, for your business in your sector, you need to understand what works. And I'm going to use two words very carefully: explore and exploit it. Thank you.
Amazing. Wonderful. I can see Folarin smiling. Before I come back to Folarin and I, we've had this conversation before about testing the law, so I know he has a comment to say.
Well, testing the law. It is what it is. If the law exists and you don't put it into test, there's nothing that the law can do by itself. Until you go out there and apply for something that the law says you can apply for, and then maybe you don't get the response you should get, then you call on us, and then we write them, and then you take it serious. In actual fact, in other countries, the way the law develops is that when people try to put that law into effect and they don't get the result they are supposed to get, they challenge the system. They take matters to court. They put up an opposition, and then everybody sits up and they do what they are supposed to do. So it is a very, very profound statement that whatever the law has provided for, it didn't provide it for itself. It is for people to put it into use. So don't be scared to say. The challenge has been that nobody wants to be the victim. To say, oh, if I insist on this particular thing, then my business suffers. Then I don't want to be that person. Let me just follow what everybody is doing to get things done. But really, people really have to start asking for what the law has provided for. If the law says it should happen in 24 hours, demand for it. Yes, you might get some resistance, but the law will not come into effect until we start applying for things that the law has provided for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A round of applause, please. And now, quickly, as we wrap up now, and we'll take Dr. Soji's comment first. We want to hear now, there's a new administration in town. And they are listening to you right now. What three things could you mention to them?
Since you're in a hurry.
You mean the administration or the people in the room now? Well, okay, so let me quote something I saw on Twitter. And I'm trying to remember who said it. I think it was Inya Boyeji. And he said, I hope I get the quote right, so let me attempt to, then I'll just paraphrase, that if the government does not do anything for the youth, or I think for the tech industry, he said, at least don't get in the way. And I think what he meant by that is, to put it in better language, is that government should, as we say, create an enabling environment, for the youth and for the technology space, which is predominantly where a lot of young people play in. The median age in Nigeria today is about 17 years. So regardless of what you do, right, these are the people you have, that's the country you have. So that enabling environment in the places where they practice technology, creativity, industry, and all of that is what you need to allow them play in. The second thing I want to say, now this is not to government, but this is to the people in the room, is that there is the common misconception that government is the biggest spender in the economy. Government is actually not the biggest spender in the economy. Add all the budgets together, it's not up to what the private sector does as business, right? I'm talking about all 38 budgets, federal plus 36 plus FCT. But what government is, and that's what I want to sink in, is that government is the biggest enabler of business. And so you need to see government, emphasis on see government, as an ally for it to work for you, right? Don't come already with that, disposition that is not going to work. If you come with that, then it truly will not work, because all you begin to see are the negatives. But we've just shown you examples now of the things that the big players do, that you can find the small version of those big things to do. I'll leave you with one example, and this is my final point. There is I think it's a generator manufacturer or generator assembler in this country. Name as many as you want. One of them does this. Talking about the pioneer status that Mrs. Adeyemo said. And I once saw, the generator, the engine itself, that diesel engine. But that generator, company also builds the silent cabins. Are you following this? Now, the silent cabin, by some stroke of luck or by some definition, is actually, because the pioneer status is for, innovative technology, sort of. The building of a silent cabin technically is innovative, such that the company, the subsidiary company, or the associate company that built the silent cabin got a pioneer status, then backward acquired the actual one. Are you following this conversation? And therefore, everybody has the pioneer status. So when I say explore and exploit, you need to understand that there are things, there are laws that work in your favor. There are ways, legal. This is totally legal, and that's why, the likes of CHLP will interpret and let you see what you can do, right? Totally legal, nothing wrong with it, right? And suddenly, an entire business is enjoying pioneer status, maybe for 3 years, for 5 years, until the government says, look at what you did, and then they adjust that law, and then we look for another one again. So I'm just saying that I'm saying that there are things today that you can explore, right? Or if you like, exploit, that are to your benefit for a period of time, until a lot of people are doing it, and then government sees that, okay, this is something we need to plug, and then they plug it, right? For a long time, government wasn't getting anything from the SMSs and all the alerts, but suddenly they've realized that, that's such a huge amount of money that they can make, taxing the SMS alert, taxing this, taxing that, allowing the MTNs of this world, collect taxation on their behalf, right? All those things now are now being used as a benefit. So I'm saying that there are benefits in government engagement, there are benefits in understanding your laws, your regulations, and your policies, and I think I've said that like a million times. And I'm saying engage in that. You now have a new government, you have the benefit of starting afresh, understanding, that government all over again. KYC, know your customer, so know your government. All right? KYG.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Mrs. Babatunde Ojo, briefly.
Okay, so without spending too much time on this, yes, we've spoken about deregulation, which is removal of subsidy. But I still think the government has a lot to do as regards removal of subsidy. So at the moment, people are saying everybody is free to bring in the product, but then it's still not a level playing field. And what do I mean by that? The regulators still have upper hands above the regular importers. So if the government really wants that industry for efficiency purposes, I feel there should be level playing ground. So as much as NNPC has access to foreign exchange to bring in the product at an official rate, importers like us should also be given the same opportunity to also have access to FX at that same rate. That is when the real efficiency will come in. Because efficiency, the essence of the regulation, removal of subsidies to bring about efficiency. Efficiency drives competition. And of course, we all know what competition does to business. It brings about value in terms of price reduction. So I'm not saying the price will be lower post-subsidy, but then we'll all be efficient to the extent that it is whoever sells cheaper that you will buy from. So in terms of removal of subsidy, I still feel the government needs to do more. And then secondly, what I would like the new administration to do is to improve our FX reserve. So maybe I'm speaking because of my own industry, because we've always been import dependent. Most of us, the importers, we have unsettled FX obligations as a result of lack of foreign exchange. And that's because our FX reserves have declined. But if the government can look at improving our non-oil exports, and then improving the crude production to the extent that we begin to build our FX reserves to the extent that we have enough FX liquidity to be able to do business properly. And lastly, I would like the government to look into our infrastructures. This cannot be overemphasized. This cannot be overemphasized. No matter how good your initiative, your strategy are as a company, as much as the infrastructure is not in place, the cost of doing this business will continue to rise. Lack of electricity, lack of good roads, lack of basic amenities. So those are the basic things the government should look at. Yes, rest subsidy is gone, but what are the palliatives? Where are they going to be channeling these funds they are removing from subsidy to? So thank you. Those are the three advice I want to pass on to the new administration.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Cherise, quickly.
For us, if we had the administration, it would mostly boil down to repatriation or guarantee of repatriation for outside investors. That still remains to be one of the most significant challenges that we face, and it's always a question that we're faced with when talking to outside investors. So some type of guarantee or assistance in terms of repatriating funds. I'll just focus on that one because I think that my co-panelists here have highlighted some other ones specifically around FX.
Awesome, thank you. And Dr. Wale Ekundayo?
All right. So my final take would essentially be that, I wouldn't say much, like we said, a lot of things are already in the pipeline for the government. I'm going to be talking to people in general that we should keep pushing the bounds. I think when we begin to do those things, the government themselves are learning from what every other person is doing, and then they are taking actions. Number two, it's also important that at government forums, whatever stakeholder meetings, people should be participatory in most of those conversations, because the moment you are outside of it, they will take decisions on your behalf, and you probably don't have any other time to object, like they say in the court of law. You won't be able to object, the laws will be passed, and it might take another 8 years for that to be done. So it's important that we are participatory in every single conversation that entails or regards us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause, please, for all our speakers. A round of applause. Thank you. We have the event is wrapping up right now. We have just a few more minutes to go. Dr. Soji, I hope you've obliged us. Sincere apologies. He has somewhere else to be very quickly. But we would be, Kemi, please. We would have to make a presentation to our panelists. We'll take a group photo. But while we are doing that, Kemi, make the arrangement. We'll take a comment from Mr. Sonjo Fawole, associate partner to Bosi Ele and Co. And then we'll take the second comment after that. I'll call the second person making a comment. He'll do that. Please get a microphone ready for him, Mr. Sonjo Fawole. This way, please.
All right, thank you. Fola called me this morning and asked that I make comment with regards to real estate and how, especially in terms of business. So, excuse me, please. I want to also say, before I say I have my comments, let me just say I'm grateful. The session has been so impactful and a lot to learn. So quickly, my comment is going to be based on, I hope we're going to have the data I sent to Fola this morning, but again, let me just reel out a few data and say one or two things in 3, 4, 5 minutes. Okay. The Nigerian business terrain, and I talked about the viability of real estate, especially with the issue of the housing needs. I hear us talk about...
To cut you, please try to make it 3 instead of 5. Thank you.
Okay, so the viability of real estate in terms of the housing needs. And I hear all the speaker talk about, especially the lead speaker talked about regulations and all that. And it's instructive to note that for me, it has to do with not the recent law, but something we've had before now, the 1978 Land Use Act, right? Which talks about, yes, the Land Use Act, and I think it's also probably the elephant in the room nobody is talking about. It will amaze you to know that 10% of all the number of houses that we have in entire Nigeria are probably titled. And that's a problem. I mean, it's a major problem. And I think nobody's really talking about this. We talk about the fact that, and it also amazes you that out of 1,000 individuals, only 23% own a house across. These are statistics that you can actually verify. And the question is going to be, what are we going to be? Are we going to sit down and watch? There's a need for 700,000 housing on a yearly basis in Nigeria. And what we do currently is just within a region of 2,000 to 3,000 annually. And so for me, and when Emmanuel was speaking earlier on, he talked about the fact that law has to be catch up with recent, it has to be something you do every now and then. The Land Use Act have been for over 40 years, if I'm not wrong, about 40 years or thereabout, and nothing is being done. And so you see why people are not even encouraged, because you wonder, why would somebody own a property or a house, and your house is just like a dead capital? You can probably use your property for your collateral, simply because it's not titled. So I think for the CHLP, it's one of the things we need to begin to look at. If only 10% of the entire country, of the property we have in Nigeria entirely, has land as registered title, then it calls for the concern. And this is an area that we can actually begin to look at and make a whole lot of business out of. And I think, lastly, please, I'm sure from the data I have here, of course, somebody talked about the fact that lack of strong institutions. Of course, we cannot overemphasize that. Of course, that's key. Then we talked about weak infrastructure. Somebody also did mention that. I think, was it Dr. that mentioned this to me some time ago when I was going to make a presentation. In this part of the world, of course, development is meant to precede infrastructure, is meant to precede development. But in this part of the world, infrastructure development actually comes in before infrastructure, and it's a whole lot of problems. So by and large, I think for our business, for the legal minds, the learned colleagues that are here, I think it's something we need to begin to look at, especially if we're going to unlock the economic potential of Nigeria. We must pay critical attention to the issue of the Land Use Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fawoli. So very quickly, in 2 minutes as well, let's quickly just take this before we wrap up. Mr. Sukomi Adeke, Executive Director, Veritas Capital Assurance PLC. Please, please, sir, please try to help us keep to 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Well, instead of a comment, question, instead of a comment, rather, I will rather wish to ask a question from Dr. Soji. Late last year, coming into this year, many organizations cut budgets, both on the income and the expenditure side. Now, just a single statement, subsidy is gone, has put many of those budgets in tatters. My question is this, Dr. Soji. what top 3 advice will you give, leveraging on your expertise in the Nigerian business terrain? What top 3 advice will you give to organizations on the next thing for them regarding the removal of subsidy? Thank you.
Dr. Soji.
I think it's one advice. As a business person myself, we are currently in a budget review session. You need to think about reviewing. So the fact that you have an annual budget process does not constrain you, right, to leave it that way. If things change, if the fundamentals upon which you do business change today, then it is enough ground for you to begin to rethink, whatever budget you started with at the beginning of the year. That's why you have a board of directors. That's why you have, a company financial secretary, a financial officer, a CFO, or a chief financial officer. That's why you have, an entire finance unit, and people that are looking at those numbers for you. So I think that just for the benefit of a new administration, for the benefit of the fact that we are beginning to see policies that will adjust, inflation, cost of transportation, energy costs, even salaries, of what else is happening, right? What the implications of those things. You need people to sit in the room with you and strategize. All right. So we're in June now, so you are due for a half-year, strategy session, correct? So I think this is what you should use it for.
Thank you very much. Someone is calling to my attention something about gender balance for the people who made comments. Can we give room for one lady to ask, and I believe we can wrap this up in 2 minutes, both the question and the answer. Please, let's do that. Okoche, she's seated there, should ask a question in 10 seconds and the answer will come in a minute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity and congratulations to the CLP and to all the speakers. Well done. We live in a country where people hear tax laws, regulations, and everyone just curls back into their shell because they believe that some of these laws and regulations do not work for them, especially business owners. Right. Now let's talk about awareness. Mr. Soji earlier on talked about the need to understand these laws and regulations. And I am a serial entrepreneur and thankful for this platform. I wouldn't have this understanding. And I also have a network of other business owners who have zero idea of some of these laws and regulations and how it can work for them, especially in an economy where they're constantly struggling, right? So how do we bridge this gap, in reaching out to these people? So yes, there is the role of the National Orientation Agency, right, in communicating some of these policies, especially where Mr. Soji is being part of that reform or part of the team. Right? How do we bridge this gap in, enlightening and creating this awareness to these business owners that these laws and regulations are very important for your business? We have a lot of businesses who are not even registered. They do not want it because they're like, no, they want to evade tax, right? Okay. But they need to understand some of these. how do we, bridge those?
I think Folarin will take that.
Thank you.
In about a minute.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, tax compliance in Nigeria is relatively easy. Where you begin to have problems with tax people is if you've not registered and you've not been paying at all. That is where the problem usually is. When they knock on your door and you've been paying, they kind of walk away. But when they come by and you're not registered, you've not been paying anything at all, that's when they slam you with millions. But if you've been paying regularly and you've made it a pattern, we're a law firm, and we could think that maybe tax people will not knock on our doors, but we pay all the taxes. Yeah, and when you pay it regularly, it's usually not much. It's when you have allowed it to accumulate over a long time and the tax man comes and can't find any record that you've been paying, that's when it becomes quite hectic. Because I checked the records. If you're paying monthly, you're paying per transaction, you're sorting it out immediately, it doesn't become a burden. But it is when you take your eyes off and you want to, let's quickly use the funds, let's quickly spend it, that's when it becomes a major issue. But to make sure you're fine, I think you should just make sure you're in touch with your counsel, make sure you have a lawyer regularly advising you. And
all right, so we really have to cut the conversation here for now.
Yeah, if there are further questions, we'll make our email available.
Yes,
for the purpose of this conference, everybody here will get free legal advice on any question. So once you just send us a mail, the advice will be free. Yeah.
Yes, so we are going to draw the curtain on the conversation right now, but I think it should still continue. Some of the things, like I mentioned, if you go on our LinkedIn page, and very soon on our website, you'll find a lot of the information we discussed, summaries and key highlights of the BFA, the PIA, other acronyms now, and all the acronyms. You'll find, what? Oh, know your government, yes, please, very important. So I would ask that the panelists kindly stand. We have, okay. All right, the presentation for our keynote speaker, Dr. Soji. Folarin, please. Mr. Ikundayo, why are you giving the men first? And Mrs. Babatunde Ojo. All right. And then Cherise, last but not the least, Miss Cherise Alexander. All right, this is a big thank you to our panelists. Can we put our hands together for them as they take their seats and as Dr. Soji quickly runs up.
I am sure that you agree with me that that was an absolutely robust panel session. So one more time, please, let's put our hands together for all our panel members as a way of saying thank you. Please, let's put our hands together, please.
Thank you. So all protocols duly observed. This conference has been a very enlightening one, starting from the CHLP speech delivered by Mr. Folarin Oloyede, which informed us of the position of the law, most especially the Business Facilitation Act, and how it affects the running of businesses, to the speeches given by Dr. Akin Olusoji Akinyele and Mr. Wale Ekundayo, down to the panel discussion. A highlight we can take from Dr. Akin Olusoji Akinyele's speech is always check the body language of people. Very important, especially in the business sphere. Also, Mr. Wale Ekundayo in his speech gave us 3 advices which I believe are worthy of note. He advised that a business should have a legal team. A business should comply with regulations, and a business should try and attend industry events. You know, having a legal team will help you understand the regulatory landscape and the need for it, the need to comply with it. And also, complying with these regulations will help you avoid incurring penalties, sanctions, and unnecessary hassles for your business. Also, attending industry events will keep you informed of the trends and how you can improve your business. how you can improve, how you can promote your business, how you can grow, basically. So again, this conference has been very informative, and we thank all the speakers, panelists, and everyone gathered here for breaking away from their busy schedules to attend this event. Thank you all.